From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you, along with Samantha Bennett. A special edition for you today as yours truly concludes this 39-year stint at this microphone, and introducing Samantha as the new host and producer of Agriculture Today. We'll reflect on the nearly century-long history of the program, the drivers behind its success, and the rich experience it's been in getting information out to you agricultural producers and others in the industry. And Samantha will share her aspirations for the program, both as a radio broadcast and as a podcast in the years ahead, continuing the mission of K-State's service to agriculture. Stay with us. That conversation is coming right up on the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to a special edition of Agriculture Today here on the K-State Radio Network. For today's broadcast signifies a changing of the guard for this program, as come Monday, it'll be hosted and produced by Samantha Bennett. Samantha comes to us from Auburn University. And Samantha, welcome to Kansas State University. We haven't had the chance to formally do that up to this point. You've been on the broadcast the last few days, but good to have you here.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Part of our objective, and we're winging this, of course, so that may flux as we go along here. Part of our purpose, obviously, is to let folks know more about you and your background. So start right in. You're an Army brat. You say that right out.
Yeah, that's usually my coined term that I go with. It's pretty easy to understand from there what my background is. My dad served for 20 years as an Army pilot, so my life was spent on Army bases for the most part growing up. The two main ones being Clarksville, Tennessee being the area, and then Enterprise, Alabama being the second. But majority of my life was spent growing up in Enterprise, Alabama. So the wiregrass, if that rings a bell for anybody listening.
But no direct exposure to agriculture early on, right?
No, not at all. No family ties to agriculture at all. I came to college, and that was my first exposure to it, really.
Reflect back on that. This is going to be that proverbial walk down memory lane here as we exchange thoughts right here today. What was the first thing that caught your eye as far as anything regarding agriculture?
Sure. Well, that's a good walk down memory lane to go down. I don't mind doing that at all. I got my start at Auburn University with the intentions of pursuing vet school. So I came to Auburn in this fall of 2016. Wow, that's kind of crazy to think about. As a pre-vet student in the Department of Animal Sciences. So my first exposure to agriculture was in the cattle area specifically, is kind of where we focused most on. And I just saw this passion in my professors for what they were teaching us daily. And I also saw the value in the hard work that was being done by producers across our state in Alabama. And that's really what just drew me in from the get-go, was just that passion, that enthusiasm, that work ethic. It was something that I just found really attractive about the industry, and I was sucked in from there.
Again, you were in pre-vet, but you set those goals aside at some point.
I did, yeah. So when I came to Auburn, small animal was really my idea of what I wanted to do. But as I got more into the department and more involved, I was like, well, maybe mixed animal is maybe what I want to do, because this large animal thing sounds really fun. So further down the line, I did apply for vet school. I was waitlisted, and at that point in my life, I had a mentor in the department, Dr. Don Mulvaney, who eventually became my major professor, because he had been planting these seeds in my mind of, I think you and your passion for this industry would be better served as a communicator, an advocate for it. So I eventually realized that he was right, and that was ultimately what I do believe my greater purpose is serving in this sort of role. So I got my start in my graduate studies in the summer, of 2020, right after the pandemic had started, which was interesting, but the rest, happened from there.
Well, part of what we want to do today is share your experiences in your graduate work. For you tapped into something that has been evolving and emerging the last how many years now, but it really has taken off the last 4 or 5, and that is podcasts as a vehicle for informing as well as entertaining. And you studied that directly and somewhat deeply, did you not?
I did, yeah. So I was given creative reins, really, by my major professor, Dr. Don Mulvaney again. He gave me the freedom to kind of study whatever I wanted to in terms of what my research was oriented towards. And I had a deep appreciation for podcasting as a medium of communications, and I really, truly believe that it has the potential to serve as a major medium for extension purposes. So that's what one of my research projects really focused on, was podcasting as an extension tool. So during our research, we talked to different, extension entities across the entire U.S., mostly from Alabama, just because that was, who I was connected to most. But we asked them what their thoughts were on using podcasts as a medium, their experiences, some of the reflections on that, what they believed their audience was getting out of it, or maybe not in some cases. But then the other side to that research was also we talked to some of those stakeholders, as Extension commonly calls them. So the producers that were actually using these tools, specifically podcasting, we wanted to know what they thought of it. So the results of that were kind of funny. In Extension, some cases, there's this idea of their stakeholders as being kind of stagnant, the same population. But what we're seeing really is a diversification in terms of population, in terms of who is utilizing extension tools. So some personnel in extension might believe that they're serving the same population that they did 20 years ago. But really what we see from those stakeholders that we talk to is they're much more diverse than maybe expected.
A little deeper dive here. When you talked with producers, was there a theme or a common thread as far as to how they use podcasts, when they listen to them, what they're interested in? What were some of those dynamics that you uncovered?
Well, the main key point that we took from some of those individuals was that they utilized it because it's a tool that they can use on their own time. Right. And with our producer population that we have today, many of them work not only in agriculture, but other daytime jobs. So they don't really have as flexible time as they would hope for. So podcasting really provided them the ability, if they were commuting to work that morning, to listen to whatever they wanted to agricultural wise from Extension at that time, or even while doing the dishes or whatever else it was. It's a multitasking tool that allows them to gather information while still doing other tasks.
Any preference of subject matter, or was it all over the map? Or did you even get into that when you discussed podcasts with producers?
We didn't get into subject matter too much, just because we were already kind of in the weeds in some ways, but we didn't want to get too in depth. But it was really just that time thing that was a big deal for them, utilizing it as a tool.
Very good. So on that basis of that research, you finished your master's at Auburn this past spring. Fairly fresh in mind, right?
Yes, very, very. I still have some, battle wounds, I guess, that I'm licking here still.
Well, congratulations for that.
Thank you.
We haven't done that yet, but to share that. Then you arrive here. Talk about that path.
Sure. So I actually found out about the position, I think it was on LinkedIn that someone had shared it randomly. This is during my job search time, so I guess January, February, early of this year. And I was like, that sounds like a dream job. So I applied, not thinking much of it, because I was like, I don't really know that, they'll actually consider me for this. But I applied, and I heard back for my first round of interviews over Zoom sometime in March. And then not long after that, they invited me to come and visit here at K-State. So I came over sometime in March, and it was snowing, coincidentally, which was a bit different than what the weather was like in Alabama.
Fine day. Yes, it was.
But I really just was enamored with everyone that I had met, and very impressed by the program and the work that was being done here. And I flew back to Tennessee, because that's where I was staying over spring break. And I was just like, I really hope that this works out, because I think I'd be really happy there. And ultimately, it did, surprisingly, and I'm tickled about it, so I'm thrilled to be here.
And we're thrilled to have you here. What appealed to you about this specifically? You say it was your dream job and all of those nuances, but was there something in specific that really grabbed you?
Well, I've always said that I'd be happy doing anything where I'm making a difference with producers. So this is obviously a role that allows you to directly do that. It's not my research that I'm sharing at all by any means, but I'm the vehicle for getting that information out in this role, and that's something that really appeals for me. Another thing that appealed to me about this job, and after meeting with you all when I came and visited, was just the vision for extension that you guys have here at Kansas State, that we have here at Kansas State University. It's exciting. You guys, you see the direction of how stakeholder populations are changing, and you recognize a need to change to fit the needs of those producers. And that's something that was really important to me when I was looking at jobs.
Alabama agriculture and Kansas agriculture are not exactly the same, though, as you've pointed out, and justifiably so. So you're hoping to learn specific things about agriculture as you go? Kansas agriculture, that is.
Absolutely. We're working with a vastly different landscape in terms of work that's being done. It's vastly different as well. So I'm excited to see, especially with the cattle side of things, because that's, like I said, the area that I've spent most of my time in my studies in. You know, we're mostly cow, calf, and stocker in Alabama, so getting to see the end result of that, how it's finished out in the feedlot, I'm thrilled and really excited and looking forward to seeing that in real life. But in terms of crop production, it's a totally different landscape as well. It's been fun to see wheat fields and to see some of that going on. So I'm thrilled and excited to learn so much more about the industry because, like you said, it's just vastly different.
It's been obvious you have a craving for that new information and have already interacted with a great number of our specialists and talked shop with them. After this upcoming break, we're going to hand the lead mic over to you, and you're going to take over the interview process here. But again, you've spoken a bit to your aspirations, but where do you hope agriculture today will be 2 years from now?
Sure. So I think it's the goal it's always been, is just making sure we're meeting the needs of producers across the state of Kansas and beyond, even in some cases. So just getting to know our audience a little bit better will probably be the utmost of my priorities, maybe doing some survey work to determine that, and just making sure we're meeting those needs, but also growing on the podcast side of things, making sure that people know that it's a resource and being as adamant about sharing that as possible.
We'll be back after this break as once again the transition is underway, as Samantha Bennett will be your new host of Agriculture Today come this Monday, the 13th of June. This is the K-State Radio Network.
Welcome back to Agriculture. Today we are continuing our conversation about the change that we're going to be experiencing here. And with that, we want to make sure that we're saying a good and very much deserved farewell to Eric Atkinson, the 39-year host of this show. Eric, how do you feel?
Loaded question, isn't it?
I know, we'll start running.
People use the phrase bittersweet in these things, and that's true to an extent here, but don't want to get overwhelmed with that. It's been a great run, 39 years. It's been a wonderful experience. That's not being trite. That's being very accurate. And so there will be aspects of it that are definitely missed. And as we've discussed before off the air, the people that we have worked with here in this program, this broadcast, regularly or sporadically, periodically, whomever they might be, are just like so many people in Kansas agriculture. Good, down-to-earth, sharp, engaging people whom with you make lifelong friends simply through your working with them. That won't end. Those friendships won't end. The more regular interaction with those folks will likely end. But as I've said to you, Samantha, multiple times in the last week or so, I'm not going away. I'm going to be around Manhattan, going to continue to live with my wife, Rhonda, in western Wabaunsee County for the foreseeable future. And we will be at ag events and everything else, so we will be seeing folks quite a bit. But it is time to pass this baton to the next generation and take agriculture today forward. I've been extraordinarily gratified to have been part of its history. Come December the 1st of 2024, if everything goes according to plan, Agriculture Today will celebrate its 100th year of existence. It wasn't always called Agriculture Today. It was the Farm Hour in the early days of the 20s. But it has been a regular broadcast consistently all those years. And so how do I feel? Ready to move on to the next thing, and there will be next things. But how I really feel mostly is extraordinarily confident in handing this over to somebody who I think and feel has the same passion for agriculture and will have for K-State as she becomes more ingrained in this thing. So I am very glad for that transition.
Well, you're extremely kind. thank you for saying that.
Sure.
That means the world to me. Stepping into your shoes here, I recognize I have big shoes to fill.
And we're going to go back over that again. Because I'm being facetious here, but folks have said that you're filling big shoes, and I'm quick to correct them that she is not filling this broadcaster's shoes. Those shoes don't need to be filled. You're in your own shoes, and you're going to excel in your own shoes, and not just walk, but sprint in those shoes. So don't worry about my boots. They'll still be occupied.
There is a legacy to uphold here, though, which you are very much so familiar with, because you kind of similarly filled big shoes as well.
Yeah, a little legacy here. And I'd like to share this because as time passes, sometimes details of history get lost in the shuffle. And I think it's important that we recognize, and particularly with this broadcast, it does have a legacy that I did not establish. I inherited, and I was proud to do so. But again, 1924, KSAC goes on the air. Among the many first programs they broadcast was the Farm Hour, which is, as the name would imply, agricultural outreach programming for farmers and ranchers. Continues to this day. I won't go through the whole list of folk that contributed to that over the years in the various ways that they did. In 1966, my predecessor, Paul DeWeese, which is a name which will resonate with some of our older listeners very well, as a matter of fact, became the host of Agriculture Today. He had been associated with KSAC up to that point in numerous capacities, but took over the program in 66. Paul became, over the years, the dean of agricultural broadcasters in the Midwest. He was often referred to as that, and justifiably so. The man was a consummate professional, a wonderful broadcaster, had the greatest voice. As I told somebody on the phone earlier this morning, again, had the smoothest voice you could ever want to hear on radio. I did not have the fortune of meeting him, unfortunately. I had never met Paul DeWeese. He passed away unexpectedly, I believe at the age of 63, in 1983. So suddenly, and I won't go through all the particulars of being hired, but was extraordinarily tickled to be asked to become the next host of Agriculture Today following his passing. And then in July of 83, was hired on and started then. Saying all that to say the history of agriculture at KSAC and then KKSU, when the call letters changed in 1984, is rich in terms of service to agriculture and to Kansans, broadly speaking. That whole thing collectively definitely is a legacy. Glad that it's continuing to be a legacy as we move forward. And you feel gratified by being part of it now. I certainly do, being part of it. And but it's, again, all about who we serve. And that's the most rewarding part of all.
Well, I'm sure those listening will all agree. I'll speak on behalf of all of you, though I haven't served you much yet, that you have served as a key instrument in their day-to-day lives in terms of them listening to this program. So I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of all of them when I say thank you for all that you've done for the state of Kansas.
No, sure. More than happy to serve. You know how special agriculture is, and it's been fascinating to watch it evolve over the years. You know, nothing stays static forever, to say the least. The things that we can accomplish now in agriculture that we couldn't when well, I shouldn't go back that far. There was no internet when I started, for instance. But the things that we can do now in agriculture, technology is just, and we've talked about this before, Samantha, off air, just spectacular to watch. The things we can do in precision agriculture and crop production, the things we can do in genetics and livestock are just phenomenal, and it's exciting and enjoyable to share some of those accomplishments as they might be happening here at K-State with our scientists and specialists, with people out there that can benefit from that. Again, I credit all of our people in the K-State realm. They're the ones that carried the day. They're the ones that had the information. They're the ones that were willing to come in and pass that along via this thing we call radio. Without their knowledge and their capabilities, there is no Ag Today, obviously.
And as you continue to reflect on 39 years and countless numbers of interviews that you've conducted, what are some of the major takeaways that you're going to carry on?
The major takeaways are that though agriculture has its ebbs and flows, ups and downs, issues of all manner across the spectrum over any given period of time, agriculture is still the number one industry in this state. Kansas excels in this business we call agriculture, farming and ranching, agribusiness, agrifinance, so on and so forth. I take away that that's not going to change, for sure. I also take away that as we see changing of personnel and what have you here at K-State, we have retirees in this field and that field and what have you, but we reload here at K-State. Good expertise may move on, or it may, again, retire, call it a career. But we do refortify our services, and we do, and you can look across the departments, we do re-engage our purpose very well. So what I'm taking away from that is that as we look forward, that agriculture and its purposes out of K-State are in a good place right now to move forward. There are always issues. There are always things like funding. There are things like facilities needs, and that is a real thing. That is a real objective here at K-State. We do need an influx of facility improvements in various areas because some of our buildings have run their course. There are always those things, but the main core of success for agriculture out of Kansas State University remains the people. It always will. And we are sitting well there with a lot of good young, and when I say young, early to mid-career faculty and staff and researchers and specialists who are cut from the same cloth. They're dedicated to the cause of helping agricultural producers and others who help agricultural producers. I take away that as we're midway through 2022 now, that K-State's in a really good position to remain an excellent land-grant university. And that's a really good feeling.
Well, as we wrap things up here, Eric, I know you're going to do a little later on in the next segment, but are there any words you'd like to end on?
Other than thanks for everybody's interest in this program, and certainly thanks to all of those, I wish I could count them all, but the hundreds of people who have contributed to it over the years and gone out of their way to be part of what we do. So I can't adequately at all express the appreciation to those folks and to the people who have listened faithfully and our new listeners as far as that's concerned as well. We appreciate the interest and the support, and we'll always welcome the feedback, and it's been a really, really good experience. That's the simplest thing to say.
That will conclude this segment of Agriculture Today. We'll be back with more on the K-State Radio Network.
You are tuned to Agriculture Today. There is nothing more gratifying than serving that you think is of undeniable importance to you, importance to others. No greater honor than having the opportunity to do so. Growing up on a farm in the Tisdale area east of Winfield in Cowley County, Kansas, I developed early on an appreciation for such things as dedication, hard work, the sense of community, and the rewards that come from being associated with farming and ranching and the rural life. Glenn and Peggy Atkinson saw to that, and I remain eternally grateful to them for that upbringing. Back then, the thought was to be a sportscaster. As a youth, I listened faithfully to Harry Carey and Jack Buck doing the St. Louis Cardinals baseball broadcasts, and in K-State basketball broadcasts with the late, great Dev Nelson and Paul DeWeese, the former to one day become my co-worker at KSAC Radio, and the latter was my predecessor and host and producer of Agriculture Today. After earning that broadcasting degree in 1978 from K-State, it was 3 different stops at radio stations in Kansas, 2 in commercial radio as a news and sports director, and 1 as a development director for a public radio station. 2 calls came in the spring of 1983, one from a good friend in March who informed me that Paul DeWeese had unexpectedly passed away. That friend saying that mine was the first name that came to her mind as a potential successor. The second came in May from the Director of Extension Radio and Television here at K-State, Jack Burke, who extended that invitation to become the next Extension Agriculture Radio Specialist at K-State. And it took all of a split second to respond with a resounding yes. And at the ripe age of 26, I was then working side by side with true legends in broadcasting. Jack Burke, who was a national leader in the formation of public broadcasting, the incomparable Ralph Titus, and another man whose work I had admired for so long, forever the voice of the Wildcats, Dev Nelson. No young broadcaster could have been more lucky. Fast forward, 39 years have now passed, 39 rich and rewarding years. Now, granted, putting together an hour-long agricultural radio broadcast every weekday, one that's relevant, that has value to agricultural producers and the industry proper, has not always been a walk in the park. But what has made it all worthwhile, again, the day-to-day pleasure of working with scores of brilliant, engaging agricultural scientists and specialists from K-State, and occasionally beyond, people who were and are well-grounded in principles and in purpose, who are genuinely committed to serving agriculture for the betterment of the industry and its people. Every day was a learning opportunity for me. Lifelong friends were routinely made. I was merely the conduit for the information that these exemplary people have generated. What has obviously made it worthwhile as well has been the satisfaction of providing you producers, farmers and ranchers, with that same information, with the intent of helping you excel in your agricultural pursuits. There is no better feeling than to have a farmer or rancher approach you at a field day or other occasion and say that he or she listens to Agriculture Today and values the information it puts out. That reassurance is what it's all about. The time has come to hand the studio keys over to the next generation. As you heard earlier, a very enthused and energetic young broadcaster and podcaster, Samantha Bennett, will be the new producer and host of Agriculture Today starting this Monday. She is eager to experience what I have been blessed with over nearly 4 decades. An extraordinarily fulfilling working relationship with the great agricultural minds and personalities associated with Kansas State University and with the farmers, ranchers, agribusiness folk, and rural Kansans for which we generate this program every weekday. Thank you all for your listenership, your support, and your commitment to agriculture. Eric Atkinson here. This has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.